Let's just say you need to have a certain mindset to work on simulations. You have to be able to foresee an incredibly complex process, create the initial state for your sim, then press play and hope for the best. A huge part of this work is trial and error and waiting for the computer to calculate. And before you think that, oh, so it's the computer that does all the work, well, let me just tell you, it ain't. Computers can do calculations really quickly, but other than that, they are as stupid as a rock. If you want it to do what you need, then you have to spend an extortionate amount of time fine-tuning and art directing the whole process. And not spending the time and effort on it can lead to a result like this. Whenever you see something truly mind-blowing on screen, that is almost definitely made by Houdini, which is a weird name for the program, because Houdini was an escape artist, unless they meant it allows you to escape the mundane world of our reality straight into the realm of magic, and magic it is. Houdini can do everything, and of course, that means it is as complex as a software can get. But you will have to kinda take my word for that, because I will just about scratch the surface. So, sue me. Houdini is a procedural, node-based program, which is fancy for you can build your system one piece at a time and change anything at any point, giving you full control over everything. As I am an experienced and professional CG artist, I have no reason to explain why I haven't modeled Mjolnir to scale to begin with, and why I waited until this point having to eyeball it. I had very good reasons. Once I was done scaling the model, I separated the head from the handle, as only the head will shatter, and I don't need the simulation being applied to the handle. Finally, I turned it to the angle I will drop it in, and transferred it to Houdini. Houdini looks a bit different from Maya. There is still a 3D viewport, but the real work is done in the node editor on the right. To do anything, you have to create a node. And there are many of those. Then, you can connect them up and hope for the best. Here I realized that the cap of the handle wasn't modeled, so I had to go back to Maya and fix it. So much for foreseeing things. Once I imported both the handle and the head, I dropped down a merge node and, well, merged them. The way it works is that whichever node has the blue flag on its right showing is the one you see in the viewport. This way, you can go up and down your node graph and see exactly what does what. To move the hammer, I added a transform node, then put down the RBD material fracture node. Of course, I first added it to the wrong mesh, but at least you can see how the same node works the same way, regardless of which object you apply it to. And now, the head is actually separated into many smaller pieces. A subdivide node smoothed out the mesh nicely, and here you can see the complexity of the system within the fracture node. Node. It's a node-based program, what do you expect? I made a few small adjustments to fine-tune the shattering, and added some physics to the system so we could actually drop it. The last thing I need is a ground for it to fall on. I made it a bit bigger and cleaned up the network from the nodes I didn't need. That's right, even when doing CGI you can't escape housekeeping. And bang! The eagle has landed. Rather roughly, I might add. Now, I wasn't happy with the amount of debris I got. It was a bit too much, so I made some modifications to the RBD fracture. That's much better. We are now ready to add some detail to it. I decided that I was probably happy with the result, so I cached the simulation before actually testing it. Not a great plan, but meh. You can see the minutes it took to actually cache, and it's actually not even that bad. Caching is when you let the program run through the simulation and save what exactly happens for each frame. We do this for two reasons. First of all, because we are dealing with a sim, that's short for simulation. The program kind of guesstimates what happens on each frame. So depending on what you're doing, your sim might look slightly different each time you run it, which is not ideal if you're in the middle of rendering your scene and it crashes and you have to start from the beginning because the new render won't match the first one. The second reason is that, once again, as it is a sim and not hand animated, you can't just jump to frame 50 and see how it looks there, because the computer has to run the whole simulation up to that point to make that calculation. So you would have to wait for it to run the sim each time you want to scrub around the timeline. But when you cache the sim, you create an external file for each frame, and when you jump there, it will load in that file, so it is always consistent and you can go back and forth. And there you go, I jumped to frame 109 and the frame loaded in no problem. The pieces don't look amazing, but this is called a flipbook. In Maya, it would be a playblast. It's sort of like a render, but from the viewport. So when you have a heavy sim that you can't play in real time, you can render the viewport and watch that back. And that looks good enough for me, ready to add the lightning. To make the setup a bit quicker, I added a sphere to be the stand-in for the hammer, then a plane for the floor. Then I scattered some points on them to be the two ends of the lightning, paired those up, and connected them with an add node. The resample node I added, well, I guess I could say adds resolution to the lines so they could bend. Now it's pretty difficult to talk about Houdini without getting technical, because that's like the whole point of Houdini, that it's technical, but essentially I'm creating animated noise that resembles electricity. I actually ended up having to follow Dylan No Surnames tutorial to get me started with this. Links are in the description, it's a really good tutorial. So bits of codes here, bits of nodes there. I'm just gonna shut up for a second and just let you enjoy the music. I've just turned the lines into geometry, did a test render, and was very satisfied with the result. I create lightnings better than Zeus, or like another mythical god famous for lightning, but I can't think of any. Now it's time to replace the sphere with pieces of the hammer. This is what I meant by procedural work, allowing you to change whatever you want. I swapped the sphere to the hammer, and everything else will still work just fine. I made some adjustments, keyframed the lightning strikes, and ran another flipbook render. Let's see. The hammer is too light, the lightning goes through the floor, and the sim in general seems a bit weird. In other words, perfect! Ready to be rendered! And that is exactly what we will do in the next video, where we will set up the lights, camera, and render layers that we can composite together into the final shot. So yeah, cool stuff. Make sure you check it out. In the meantime, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. It's a click for you and means a lot to me. As always, you've been amazing, have an awesome day, and see you in the next video.